Welcome to the Practical Guide to Your Gut. This is Module 2, Lesson 1. This is entitled Nutrition and Your Gut. So I'm Dr. A, and I'm going to take you through what it means to talk about nutrients and how they relate to gut health. So first, we'll start off with the discussion of the standard American diet, or SAD. This consists of foods that are of low nutritional value. Uh, Many Americans subsist and sustain themselves on these foods, and they are usually really in a bad way regarding nutrition. Um, the standard American diet is filled with heavily processed food and refined food, contains a lot of saturated fats and trans fats, refined sugars, processed carbohydrates, toxic additives, and hormones. And these can all be very detrimental to our gut health. These are compounds that do not promote healthy gut lining, and in fact can contribute to such problems as dysbiosis and leaky gut. So when we're talking about processing of food, this is a very good depiction of what that looks like. On the left of the screen, you have minimally processed food examples. These are foods that can usually just be summed up in one word. They're corn, potatoes, carrots, whole wheat, apples, and milk. So if you take these foods, they've had very little done to them. Maybe they've been picked, they've been washed, and that's pretty much it. However, when you start moving towards the right, you're going to see that these foods undergo processing, and in different stages, you have different degrees of processing, such as, more sugar being added or more nutrients being removed. So in the case of canning or juicing, you're going to be adding sugar and removing fiber. Flour also will, be processed, and sometimes even more gluten is added to flour to make it more sticky. Um, and you have things like when you do applesauce, you cook the apples and then you puree them, and maybe you'll add more sugar or you add a preservative. Um, and in the cases of cream, it's separating out the milk. And it's further adding of sugar and further processing. And by the time you get to ultra processed foods, the foods that are on the right don't look anywhere near resembling the foods on the left. So you have corns turning into corn chip, you have potatoes turning into French fries, which are not anywhere near the same as a whole potato. Um, the carrot turning into carrot cake, which has a ton of additives and ingredients, and that'll have low nutritional value. Um, the whole wheat and the flour can turn into cookies, all adding sugar and high processing. And the jelly babies and the ice cream also have to do with adding a lot more ingredients and a lot more, and taking out a lot of nutrients. So the foods on the right really have a very low nutritional value, and it's something that we live with in our society, but it's not something that should be part of our daily diet in any way, shape, or form. So the first thing I really want to address here is fiber. And fiber is best when you can get it in whole foods. It exists in whole fruits and vegetables. It is a, a prebiotic in nature. It is very helpful to our gut. Gut likes fiber very much. Um, and high fiber diets are usually linked to the reduced risk of heart disease and reduced inflammation. The also true is that dietary fiber decreases the speed at which the body absorbs fructose, um, reducing the risk for type 2 diabetes. Um, a fructose spike is something similar to a glucose spike, except the fructose spike is not visible, it's not measurable, but we know that it exists in in uh, in the same time as a glucose spike. But a fructose spike can actually do more damage because we can't measure it and we can't control it. Um, and then we also lead to fiber breakdown. Products of fiber are short chain fatty acids, or SCFAs, which reduce the cholesterol levels um, by lowering the rate of cholesterol production. And these SCFAs, or short chain fatty acids, some of them are called butyrate and acetate. I'll go into that in subsequent slides. But one thing that you should know as a take-home point is that the standard American diet lacks fiber, and this is not good. How can you get more fiber? Well, you get more fiber from whole fruits and vegetables. It's mostly vegetables, such as Brussels sprouts or artichokes or broccoli. You can get them from berries like raspberries or black beans or blackberries. Lentils have a lot of fiber. You can also get it from avocados or whole wheat pasta or barley. These are all foods that contain high fiber, and that is something that your gut loves. So, short chain fatty acids are found in fiber rich foods such as fruits, vegetables, and legumes. These are some of the foods that you saw in the last slide. And um, one of the things you have to remember is the amount and type of fiber you eat affects the composition of the bacteria in your gut. And in turn, this affects what short chain fatty acids are produced. There are some bacteria that are more butyrate producing, or some that are acetate producing. So, and they react towards the food that they work with the food that you eat and the fiber that you ingest, and they turn that into short chain fatty acids, which are um, used as substrates or compounds that are used by the mitochondria for oxidation, and the citric acid cycle, which are both functions that form energy, or ATP, for the functioning of the cell. So, if these short chain fatty acids or medium chain fatty acids are in short supply, you cannot have these vital cellular functions occur, and the cells do not perform properly. So now you can see how in the colon, this is a blow up of the cell wall of the colon. So if you have, this is the lumen, or the inside. So this is where really the food would sit, and then you have these are the lumen inside, in between the cells. These are the tight junctions. Um, and here you probably have these little bacteria that are living there, which is normal for the bacteria to be living in the gut lining. This is the commensal bacteria. And you have short chain fatty acids produced, right? And these short chain fatty acids will help with uh, help with all the different functions, such as the vessels, nerves, adipose tissue, brain, liver, and pancreas and muscle. So all of these end organs and cell types have short chat short chain fatty acid receptors, which use the short chain fatty acids as a signal, and as help to do different kinds of cellular functions. And these butyrate, acetate, and propionate, which are short chain fatty acids, are instrumental in the citric acid cycle and in oxidative phosphorylation, as I mentioned, and this is vital to the cell and cell function. So all of these work at the cellular level, and these cell functions provide cell energy for the cell in the form of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And these short chain fatty acids are all helpers in that process. And so not having them will have reduced cellular function, and uh, can be play a role in digestive disorders. So short chain fatty acids can be protective against some digestive disorders. And the gut bacteria will convert resistant starch and pectin to short chain fatty acids, which can reduce diarrhea. So resistant starch and pectin, which are like seen in like the peels of apples, and starch like in potatoes. This will all just kind of reduce diarrhea, lets you binds you up. Um, Butyrate is a short chain fatty acid that has been used to treat IBD, including ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And they may also play a role in prevention and treatment of cancers, such as colon cancers, um, by increasing expression of the epithelial barrier, which forms molecules and influencing the production of the immune cells in the colon. Short chain fatty acids also play a role in diabetes. And you see actually some degree of dysbiosis in diabetic patients. And in that case, the short chain fatty acids can improve the insulin sensitivity, control blood glucose levels in diabetics, in type 2 diabetics, and improve beta cell function and stimulate insulin production. Because you know that insulin is secreted by the beta cells of the pancreas. So there is a role for short chain fatty acids to work with controlling dysbiosis in diabetic patients, and sugar control by the form of improving the function of the beta cells to produce insulin. Short chain fatty acids also affect weight loss, or the ability of a person to lose weight. And the gut microbiome composition affects nutrient absorption and energy regulation, and it influences the development of obesity. And the fat burning and decreasing fat storage is the way that short chain fatty acids regulate fat metabolism. And so they do so by reducing the quantity of free fatty acids in the blood, which also protects against weight gain. Unfortunately, more research on this is needed because most of this is based on animal and test tube studies. So one of the questions that someone may have is, can you take short chain fatty acids, or maybe taking fiber supplements such as Metamucil, or any other kind of like fiber compounds that you mix in water or something like that. And so do you want to do that, or do you want to get your fiber from your diet? So really eating high fiber food is the best way to increase levels of short chain fatty acids, because most of the supplements that we take can be absorbed before reaching the colon. And in the colon, they really have the most effect. So you want as much of the supplement, or as much of the fiber as you can, to reach the colon, and supplements may not be able to do that. So so you can see the best types of fiber for the production of short chain fatty acids includes inulin, which you can get from artichokes, garlic, leeks, onions, wheat, rye, and asparagus. So the garlic, leeks, and onions are allium. That's the allium family, and those are very useful. You can just cook with those very easily. Fructooligosaccharides, or FOS, which are fruits and vegetables, bananas, again, the allium, onions, garlic, and asparagus. Resistant starch is from potatoes, as I mentioned before, and also grains, barley, wheat, rice, beans, green bananas, and legumes. Pectin comes from apples or apricots, carrots, and oranges. And arabinoxolin comes from cereal grains such as wheat bran. Um, Guar gum comes from guar beans or and also legumes. And there's also some types of cheese, butter, and cow's milk foods which contain small amounts of butyrate. So now we're going to move on to sugar. And sugar comes in lots of different forms: brown sugar, white sugar, refined sugar, confectioner's sugar, uh, honey, agave, stevia, all these kinds of things. However, no matter how many different types of sugar you can think of, the body just sees it as sugar. So sugar is sugar. So I'm going to talk about really all sugars being seen by the body as sugar. Um, and this is how we'll proceed with this topic. So, just an FYI here, the average American consumes about 150 pounds of sugar and other sweeteners per year. And the recommended daily limit for sugar is 10% of the daily calories, which comes to about 10 teaspoons of sugar, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. However, most Americans eat the equivalent of 22 teaspoons of sugar daily. That's over double the recommended daily limit. And as I mentioned in the last slide, cane sugar, beet sugar, honey, stevia, aspartame, agave, etc., the body sees it and treats it all as sugar. And what differs among these sugars is the ratio of glucose and fructose molecules in each different sugar. So some sugars contain more fructose and some sugars contain more glucose. So it might be tempting to say, oh, well, we choose the more fructose heavy sugar like agave syrup. This causes a fructose spike in return, which is more dangerous than a glucose spike because it is invisible and potentially more damaging to our organ systems. So all sugar that's consumed is broken down into glucose, which goes into the bloodstream. And elevated glucose signals insulin secretion. When insulin is secreted, it transports glucose to the liver, where it is transformed into energy, or ATP. And excess glucose is stored in fat. And sucrose, which is just really another word for sugar, or the sugar that we eat, is glucose and fructose. So glucose is usually used for energy. For example, the heart and the brain need glucose, but sucrose can be also stored as fat. You should be very aware that 60% of foods and beverages purchased in American grocery stores contain added sugar, even in products like salad dressing. So I know that many people may have heard about how McDonald's salads have so much sugar in them. It's the salad dressing that is causing all of that sugar, among other things. I mean, if you have croutons or you have any other additives on that salad, that is going to be a source of sugar. But hidden sugar, what I'm talking about here, is what is in your salad dressing, in your ketchup, in your mustard, in all your condiments, in your juice, in products that are refined and processed and you cannot pronounce the names. So if you look for the following, such as fructose, high fructose corn syrup, evaporated cane juice, and rice syrup, these are all words and phrases for sugar. They all mean sugar.
So now we'll start talking about gluten. And gluten is a protein that's found in wheat, barley, or rye, among other things. But of note, there is more gluten in food now than there has been in the past. And this is as a result of processing. And gluten is the protein that makes bread and baked goods squishy and soft. So the more heavily processed a food is and the more gluten it has, the more squishier and softer it is. So you can kind of tell that if you buy packaged breads, they're very heavily heavy amounts of gluten in them. Gliadin is a breakdown protein that comes from gluten, and it forms a compound called zonulin, which opens the gaps in the intestinal epithelia, which causes leaky gut. And it's said that zonulin is really the key that opens these gaps. And remember when we talked about leaky gut in module 1, these those little tight junctions are like my fists together, and then zonulin kind of wedges in there and opens them up, and all these unwanted food pathogens, you name it, all of these things that are inflammatory go into the bloodstream and cause inflammation. Gluten is also an autoimmune trigger, and it works through something called molecular mimicry. Gluten is similar in structure to other proteins that occur in healthy tissues like thyroid. And when gluten gets tagged as an antigen, meaning that the immune system sees it as something that's immunogenic, the healthy tissue that is similar in structure to gluten gets tagged as well as an antigen and attacked by the immune system because the immune system sees it as non-self. So many common sources of gluten are, like I said, baked goods, including wheat, barley, malt in beer, for example, brewer's yeast, any kinds of grains. Now, gluten-free grains do exist, and you can find gluten-free grains such as oats or quinoa, brown rice, corn, millet, and amaranth. Corn and oats may have their own inflammatory processes, but they are not gluten-containing grains. Lectins are another type of protein. It's a plant protein that occurs in grains, dairy, soy, nightshades, and nuts. So nightshades are like peppers, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, and they're toxic unless they're cooked. And lectins can cause inflammation by sticking to the walls of the small intestine, and this is an autoimmune trigger. And genetically modified foods usually have increased lectins, so it makes them more inflammatory. So what we mean when we talk about processed food are processed foods that have industrial formulations, which include substances not used in culinary preparations. So these are not substances that you would find in your kitchen. They are usually names that we cannot pronounce. They are in the forms of flavorings, colorings, sweeteners, and additives such as emulsifiers, and they're not really food. And what has happened is that this leads to a population who consumes this type of food as a population that is overfed but yet undernourished. And when we talk about refined sugars, we're talking about granulated white sugars, high fructose corn syrups, and refined sugars of those like will make you fat. High fructose corn syrup is made from cornstarch. And most of the glucose in the starch is chemically altered to produce refined fructose, and this does not contain fiber. So high fructose corn syrup can occur in bread, cereals, yogurt, soups, condiments, sodas, energy drinks, breakfast bars, lunch meat, basically anything that's processed, anything that comes in a package, anything that you have to open physically or has names of ingredients that you cannot pronounce and that you cannot reproduce in your own kitchen are refined foods and heavily processed. So here's where I will recommend 10 foods that you stop eating now. And these are either actual foods or foods, categories of food, right? So, this is kind of a general list. This is something that we pretty much all know, but soda, juice, processed snack food, anything you would buy in a gas station or a convenience store. Kid food, by that I mean, anything that your kids are eating, like, little goldfish crackers or even those little cheddar bunnies or any kind of food that you wouldn't normally eat. Or that kids eat. Sometimes parents clean up the plates of their kids. The kid doesn't finish the food, you eat the food. That's not a good habit to be in. Candy, obviously, because of the high sugar and fat content. Foods that are low in fat are usually high in sugar. Years ago, we had these foods called SnackWells. I don't know if they still exist, but these are fat-free. Any kind of food that's fat-free usually contains high sugar and should be avoided. Packaged food, just like we said, anything that comes in a package that you have to physically open, it comes sealed, you should probably think twice before eating it. Food with more than 5 ingredients that you cannot pronounce, so you should read the ingredients on your food labels. Fast food should not be eaten on a routine basis. It shouldn't even be eaten once a month, once a week, once a day, and maybe once a year, but usually it should not be eaten at all. And there's so many people subsist on a fast food diet and are paying dearly for it. And the other one is breakfast cereals. And, a lot of us grew up on breakfast cereals, but the way they are now, they are just big sugar balls that are not good they have no nutritional value. Just read the ingredients before you pour anything into a bowl or put anything into your mouth. 20 foods to start eating now. Now, this is really not an exhaustive list, but some of the foods that you might want to try incorporating into your diet are berries, fatty fish, broccoli, avocados, mushrooms, green tea, almonds. Usually try naked raw almonds, nothing with sugar or salt on it. Dark chocolate you can have in small quantities. Tomatoes, sweet potatoes, bell peppers, unless you're allergic to nightshades and you have a reaction. Garlic, eggs, which are probably the most perfect food on the planet, which I absolutely adore. Cucumber, celery, kale, spinach, olives, beets, and squash. So all of these foods are whole foods. They're foods that we can all pronounce their names. We know it's one food that is self-contained, and it can be an ingredient of something larger, of a bigger dish, or it can just be eaten by itself. And when you compare these pictures to the pictures of the refined foods, notice that refined foods and processed foods are usually just very monochromatic. They're brown, they're dull, they're not very appetizing in appearance. But if you see these pictures of fresh, whole food, that are the greens and the reds, that show these vibrant colors, that these foods are just telling you that they are good for you, they are nutritious, and you should be eating them, incorporating them into your diet immediately. If I were to recommend some readings to you, there are 2 books that I think are fantastic that really tell a lot about our diet and from the functional medicine perspective. One is a book called Rebuild by Robert Zambrowski, and another Robert Silverman wrote another book called Inside Out Health, which I think were very helpful for me to understand things about our diet from a functional medicine perspective, and they would be they're very easily readable and they're great resources. If you ever wanted to work with me, I work with clients working on their gut health through assessment, personalized recommendations for testing. I order the tests and I interpret the results and recommend to clients what they should do. I also coach on weight management and stress reduction for anyone who may be interested. You can contact me through intentionalselfct.com. My Facebook identity is Intentional Self. That's my page. And my Instagram is Dr. Terry Alacio. And just so you remember, this course is for educational purposes only and not a substitute for medical advice. And if you have any concerns for your health or you wish to be evaluated for any of the issues outlined throughout the course, please contact a health professional. And I'll see you in lesson 2.